Oh, rats. I forgot to bring my water. All right. Hello. Good afternoon to you. Good morning. Good evening to me. Hope everyone is well and doing their best to stay safe during the ongoing crises of a pandemic and escalating economic and financial hardship as well to certain people. To many in the United States, their financial circumstances are actually better than normal because their expenditures have been reduced because of the constraints of staying home. Nevertheless, unemployment is increasing, and the Senate is currently still debating a skinny stimulus package, a $900 billion package that extends unemployment insurance, but not for as long as is necessary, and gives $600 stimulus checks to Americans, which doesn't adequately provide for people's needs, but is a start and could help people get through until Biden is inaugurated and hopefully two Democratic candidates win the runoff elections in Georgia, thus enabling a cooperative Congress to consider what is best for the American people, rather than stick with what is tragically a majority leadership of Mitch McConnell, under which relief funds are stymied, needed help is withheld, and in general, Russian interests are conflated with American interests. So we know, let's look at some of the things we know. Hi, Jeff. What we've heard of these last 24 hours is Trump's former Homeland Security advisor writing an opinion column in the New York Times that the Russians have access to various computer systems in the Pentagon, the military, the White House. They have the power to destroy or alter data and impersonate legitimate people because they had access to a lot of computer systems, and some of that access is ongoing and is deleterious to the interests of the American people. So just to have a look, the magnitude of this national security breach, he writes, is hard to overstate. And in relation to what I said just prior to that, 1.4 million Americans filed new unemployment claims last week, which is the highest level in weeks. And rising layoffs are, of course, an alarm bell that Congress needs to pass more stimulus. Overall, 20.6 million Americans are on unemployment aid as we head into the holidays. And this is not a consequence of any failure to embrace work. This is as a consequence of a pandemic that has been allowed to ravage the United States in an unconstrained fashion due to the lack of interest from the Republican Party and the Republican president to take action to contain this virus. Live testimony now of the Sackler family on the opioid crimes that they were involved with. They're really getting ripped into. Well, that's good. That's excellent. I hope people are watching that, because the Sackler family, who own Purdue Chemicals, encouraged doctors to prescribe more opioids to their patients if their patients were reporting addictive-like symptoms. The Sackler family and the Purdue pharmaceutical company that they owned had policies of telling doctors that these addictive symptoms were deceptively symptoms of under-prescription. So that just meant they weren't getting enough opioids and needed more, and it wasn't true addiction. Hello, Alan. Nice to see you. That's reminding me of something that I don't know that I've found you yet on Periscope, but I'll try. Maybe what I might do in the interim is look up the Politico article that should also be talked about today, because we know that Trumppublicans will have a very strong vested interest in deceiving the public about the degree to which the Trump administration purposely, willfully pursued a herd immunity strategy, a non-vaccinated herd immunity strategy, which just means letting as many people in, trying to facilitate as many people as possible getting the virus. They decided that would be a good move. Bob has to go below 10 inches of snow, so you'll catch the replay. Nice work. All right, so let's have a little look. This is the Politico scoop. They have access to emails from within the Trump administration. So Paul Alexander, the HHS science advisor to Mark Caputo, who was the communications head for the Department of Health and Human Services. We want them infected. Trump appointee demanded herd immunity strategy, emails reveal. A top Trump appointee repeatedly urged top health officials to adopt a herd, and I'm going to clarify and say non-vaccinated herd immunity approach, because you'll usually hear the phrase herd immunity in reference to vaccines, in which case that is a legitimate proposal to try and achieve vaccinated herd immunity. Otherwise, non-vaccinated herd immunity is an agricultural concept of allowing a disease to ravage your animal herd, in the understanding that you have no other recourse and that you're just moderating your expectations for how many of the animals you own will die. When you have vaccinated herd immunity amongst a human population, then you are trying to minimize death and not just predicting how much financial loss you will incur as a consequence of a large proportion of your animals dying. So Paul Alexander wrote, "There is no other way. We need to establish herd, and it only comes about allowing the non-high risk groups to expose themselves to the virus, period." Then science advisor Paul Alexander wrote on July the 4th to his boss, Health and Human Services Assistant Secretary for Public Affairs, Michael Caputo, and 6 other senior officials. Now, the reason why I'm devoting significant time and emphasis to this story is because of an important quote. The struggle against tyranny is a struggle of memory against forgetting, which is a phrase used by Milan Kundera, a popular fiction writer, but it describes his understanding of how tyranny succeeds, that people are easily distracted, people are easily susceptible to normalcy bias, and many people can forget what has been done to them and therefore forget the significance and forget the need to organize and respond and oppose. So the struggle against tyranny is the struggle of people to remind each other, don't believe that this is normal or acceptable. Remind ourselves that this was a non-scientific, this was against the advice of scientists, this was the pet hobby horse of some people infused with a social Darwinist mentality. They wanted to thin the herd. And it's it owes a lot to Republican ideology, because they often don't believe in helping people. They often believe that compassion can be overindulged in and can involve weakness. That is often the counterbalancing forces of the Republican Party and the Democratic Party over the last few decades, that it's believed that the Democratic Party is here to help and the Republican Party is here to insist that help facilitates dependency, and that government is inherently an indulgent concept and should be minimized and discarded where possible. Pokernuts pointing out that Trump has a bill on his desk to fight cyber attacks that he won't sign. Voila. So Paul Alexander wrote in the email also, infants, kids, teens, young people, young adults, middle-aged with no conditions, etc., have zero to little risk. So we use them to develop herd. We want them infected, Alexander added. It may be that it will be best if we open up and flood the zone and let the kids and young folks get infected in order to get natural immunity, natural exposure. So he's suffering from naturalistic fallacy as well, the belief that if things happen naturally, then they're for the best. Those social Darwinist, eugenicist, Republican type people often hold fast to beliefs that it's unnatural to extend help to people. And many people often point out that's hypocritical, because Republicans are often very staunchly profess Christian views and it's not very Christian. But it's not our job to accuse them of hypocrisy, of being disloyal to their own Christian values, because we're not proposing that government be organized along Christian values. We're advocates for separation of church and state. We understand that that is an extremely useful point of view for an enlightened, modern, industrialized nation, to have religion, which can be superstition and lacking in evidence, to be a matter of private practice, but for the matters of government and for the general good, that should be separate from religious beliefs. And that morality can be separate from religion also. Morality can unite people far more than religion can if you have a modern nation that allows migration and allows people from different religious faiths to seek harbor in your nation and to grow and prosper in your nation. So that's what Alexander wrote about flooding the zone and letting kids and young folks get infected. He wrote that on July the 24th to Food and Drug Administration Commissioner Stephen Hahn. It's so important to have these emails as evidence of what they were willfully promoting. So now Republicans and Trumpublicans, I'm going to say Trumpublicans just because I want to leave room for any Republicans of conscience to disavow themselves of Trump and the Republican Party, more generally speaking. And we're seeing a little bit of that. Former Republican operatives now joining the Democratic Party, and Representative Paul Mitchell, I believe, resigning from the Republican Party. These are all important things because cracks in a united front are key to sell a message to the public more broadly that something is amiss. The human psyche is evolutionarily trained to pay attention to outlying details. Outliers being things that don't fit in with a normal expected pattern. And people turning their backs on their tribal groups or their political parties, those are outlying details that command attention. Hello, Trinity, nice to see you. You've been archiving and keeping track of the attacks by Russia, and the lack of concern shown shocks you. Well, the lack of concern shown is probably a function of the degree of Russian penetration in the Republican Party. I believe you, Alan. I saw that I got some notifications. There were new articles in Discord. I hadn't managed to plow my way through my reading list of the New York Times article or the Politico article yet. So my apologies, I haven't even opened Discord yet. But yes, I would imagine Republican lack of concern is a function of their collaboration with Russian interests and their admiration for Russia in that it's more homogenous and Christian and white. And I would imagine on the Democratic side, there's a degree of learned helplessness from running up against Republican reluctance to distance themselves from Trump and to allow Trump to get away with harming American interests over and over again over the last 4 years. The scope of harm done to American interests by virtue of purposely pursuing a herd strategy is extraordinary and probably difficult for people to engage with emotionally, because it's so deadly and so economically damaging as well. So what I might do is read a tiny bit from a summary distributed by a historian by the name of Heather Cox Richardson. And she notes that coronavirus numbers continue to climb. She has a free newsletter that she sends out, but you can also subscribe to her. Heather Cox, C-O-X, Richardson, if you're curious. The Trump administration appear to have planned a federal vaccine rollout only until Biden takes office, and then has simply planned to turn the problem over to the states without any funding. This threatens to turn vaccine distribution into chaos, while Trump administration's officials are still making rosy predictions about how things will go in those early weeks. Secretary of Health and Human Services Alex Azar has promised that the vaccine will be widely distributed in February and March. But Dr. Leana Wen, a George Washington University policy professor, says that's an extremely optimistic projection that assumes everything is done perfectly, and when resources are so limited, that perfect execution is nearly impossible. So do we think that the stimulus bill that may be passed on Thursday is going to contain adequate funding for states to roll out the vaccine? Biden has nominated Pete Buttigieg for the Secretary of Transportation, which is nice. Pete Buttigieg did valuable outreach work during the election campaign by appearing on Fox and speaking the language of values to Republicans who watch Fox in a way that he's uniquely situated to be able to do, being extremely gifted verbally and intellectually, but also growing up immersed in conservative value town. He only had that point of difference of being gay that helped him potentially move away from that world of assuming that Republicans meant what they said about their values of patriotism and valuing American concepts of liberty, but also unity. I don't know about being separate, but I presumed that there was that funding included in the stimulus bill, but I also know that there was uncertainty around it. The federal government needs to provide states with funding for vaccine distribution, otherwise states can't do it. Buttigieg ran his presidential campaign on a platform of climate action. So that's one other promising thing about his potential nomination to the position of Secretary of Transportation. And I, for one, am enjoying the sensation of hope associated with a normal presidential-elect Biden making normal appointees that aren't associated with previous determination to destroy the agencies that they've been appointed to, just normal public servants who want to help with an interest in the policy determination for those fields. It's just so normal and helpful. And people who want to help America take climate action do fill me with a stirring of hope about my children's future, a hope that has been sorely strained over these last 4 years because so many conservative governments around the world are very shut off to the reality of climate change and climate science, and their thinking is very motivated thinking because, of course, they're coal captured or fossil fuel captured, meaning highly reliant on or highly welcoming of donations from powerful, wealthy fossil fuel executives, including Vladimir Putin, who allegedly gets a cut from all of the fossil fuel oligarchs, powerful business people in Russia. He has imprisoned some powerful Russian billionaires previously, so it is understood that he gets a cut of those industries, and Russia is highly dependent on income from fossil fuel sales. Yes, there's lots of damage that's been done, and Republicans will use all of that cultivated disinformation about Trump's election outcome and his loss to galvanize public support for measures to reduce the people's access to the vote. So if we leave Republicans unchallenged in their heady pursuit of killing Americans via a pandemic that's undermanaged, and also are rewarded for jeopardizing people's access to the votes and legally challenging people's ability to access the vote in pandemic conditions or just more generally speaking, we will embolden them to do that more, and they will be encouraged to steal other elections, all the while busily accusing Democrats of, baselessly accusing Democrats of stealing election results. So more of us at least know more now about Republican strategies, and it's still incumbent on us to keep spreading that awareness, writing about it, talking about it, making videos about it, and amplifying those who do speak effectively and convincingly and assertively about it, so that we are prepared to oppose Republican efforts to sabotage American democracy, to cut off from power those people whose votes would limit Republican power, whose votes would instead advance the interests of ordinary American citizens relative to the interests of wealthy Americans who may have lost sight of living in the United States, and they may feel that they are living only in a game scenario that encourages them to pursue wealth as much as possible, even at the expense of others. So, as the owners of Tyson Foods did when they prevailed with Donald Trump to get him to write an executive order forcing meatpacking workers to go to work during outbreaks of the pandemic in close conditions when it was known that that would promote viral transmission. And the managers of Tyson Foods took bets on how many of their workers would contract the coronavirus. And many did, and 5 employees died, and that betting situation was exposed and drew a lot of negative attention to Tyson Foods. But American patterns of meat consumption are likely to not change that much in response to the exposure. I hope they do. I hope the owners of Tyson Foods receive some form of punishment. Of course, fines aren't so much of a punishment for the rich as a cost of whatever business practices they choose to adopt. Oh, pumpkin pie. I know. We got to hear some of those people who wrote affidavits speak in person. We heard Melissa Carone, that delightful lady who appears to have previously worked as a sign girl for wrestling, those people who hold up the signs, possibly also as a prostitute, who sent multiple emails of herself and her boyfriend. Well, her boyfriend engaged in sexual activity to her boyfriend's ex-wife and was charged with cyber crimes, confessed to detectives that she had sent those emails containing sexually explicit videos after trying to frame the ex-wife, saying that she had hacked into her former husband's Google Cloud account and sent those videos to herself. Melissa Carone, who sat next to Rudy Giuliani and so personably participated in that Michigan hearing. So yes, whatever helps you sleep at night, instead of the sleep of the just, you're sleeping the sleep of the deluded, but we understand that it may not be possible to break through to you in any way, shape, or form. Perhaps it's possible to plant a seed so that one day, when reality keeps not working out as you are so convinced it will, you'll reflect back to that day when people told you, not really to your face, but people told you that you're deluded. And you could say, maybe my understanding is built upon a house of cards. Oh, good. So you're not buying the Tyson products. Excellent. All right, folks. Well, I might go and hang out with my husband. And I will talk to you again soon. Alan, I don't know if I asked you yesterday, did you and Sheldon have a nice birthday? As twins, maybe it's nice to have someone to share your birthday with. I know there's been lots of bad news, the SolarWinds hack, exposing that there's been much larger hacks of government agencies, of the Pentagon, that we don't know the extent of it, that just reinforcing that Trump and the Republicans have made America vulnerable to foreign attack, that they are currently failing to act in response to this extensive and ongoing attack, because Trump is a crony of Vladimir Putin and benefited from his assistance in 2016 and presumably intended to benefit from Putin's assistance in an ongoing manner. You get to so you're alone, but you get to FaceTime a lot. So you said happy birthday to each other. Excellent. You signed a petition at change.org. What was the petition about? Cool photo. Thank you. You hope the New South Wales outbreak doesn't get too out of hand. Yes, I don't live in Australia at the moment, so I'm not in immediate danger, but my father lives in the area where there is the outbreak, 17 cases, and he thinks they might have to lock down, which seems likely to me because that's what you do. That's what countries who have succeeded in containing the coronavirus have proven is necessary over and over again. Harsh, sharp lockdowns when you know that there's uncontained outbreak. You contain it, and that pays off, and then your economy can flourish again. New Zealand's economy is doing well now, whereas Sweden is suffering. Their king admitted that mistakes were made and reproached those scientists who did seek to pursue a herd immunity strategy, which makes it a little bit harder to accuse the Trump administration of crimes because Swedish people did it. The Swedish politicians and scientists did it openly to say, well, we're just going to see how we go because maybe it'll be more harmful to try and contain the virus. So the Trump officials can argue that, well, Sweden tried to do it. It's not murderous of us to try and do it. But there is other evidence that they thought that the deaths would predominantly affect Black Americans and Americans in blue states. So that's more illustrative of crimes of depraved indifference to human life from people in charge of preserving human life and safeguarding human life. I found out today that for the young people that have died of COVID, it's not even just disproportionately Black Americans, it's predominantly Black Americans, which is really sad. It is literally a majority of the young people that have died are people of color. And excess death certificates show that there have been significant increases in the number of young people who've died this year over the number of deaths typically occurring in that demographic, that age demographic. They should be safer because there's been less driving and less going out, but it illustrates that, yes, COVID does affect young people. Those who speculated that young people were safe, Donald Trump telling young people that they were safe, was misinformation and very harmful misinformation at that. Not only were young people not safe, but they were also at risk of jeopardizing the safety of their loved ones and those in their communities. Yes, the eugenics agenda has been very obvious. No, I'm not in the US now. I'm in Asia and plans to move to the US in April. And, oh, you signed the petition to keep Periscope going. That's not going to happen, I don't think. They're transferring people off Periscope into broadcasting live from Twitter, but I think there may be plans to help organize people's followers. But what you might have to do, what I might have to encourage people to do, because Periscope will shut down at the end of March, is to follow me on Twitter and to put an alert by pressing a little bell-like button on my profile page to say notify me when there's a live video, and that would help. Yes, America is only 4% of the world's population, but approximately 20% of the world's deaths, and deaths were over 3,500 yesterday. So you can round up American deaths to 4,000, or it'll soon be 4,000. Again, the pace of exponential increase is exponential. So not only people's parents are in jeopardy, but people in care facilities, people in nursing homes, that's round zero for much of this crisis. But again, high collateral damage amongst other populations that assumed they were automatically going to be spared the worst of the virus because they were young. And Trump told young people that they had nothing to fear. And many other Republicans echoed that message and perpetuated those logical fallacies. Yes, so I haven't really looked into HAPS, but I would do that. Yes. And Periscope will be used for archiving past broadcasts. Twitter Live is very good. That's excellent. Yes, Dan the man. Oh, I recognize that little gorilla face. Very personable. I don't live in the United States, but I'm capable of learning, and the amount of focused attention I have devoted to the United States and their political dynamics has been considerable. There's been a lot of attention devoted to that, and I've broadcast almost daily on the subject for over 2 years. So you can decry my experience and my contribution all you like, but I doubt you have the level of understanding or capacity to contribute that I have, having focused strongly on this situation now for the entirety of Trump's term of office. So Twitter Live is similar to Periscope, missing some features. I'm trying not to say and if other people have feedback on other professional improvements that I could undertake, I welcome that via private message or even direct message. Paul Alexander also argued, I'm going back to Trump's appointees in the health and human services sector. Alexander also argued that colleges should stay open to allow COVID-19 infections to spread, lamenting in a July the 27th email to the CDC Director, Robert Redfield, that we essentially took off the battlefield the most potent weapon we had, younger, healthy people. Hello, Pumpkin. Did you wake up? Toilet? Okay. Younger, healthy people, children, teens, young people who we needed to fastly infect themselves, spread it around, develop immunity, and help stop the spread. These people think they're scientists, and they're just subscribers to the pseudoscience of eugenics. And there was no good cause to believe that you should try and hasten the spread of coronavirus in order to stop the spread. The number of deaths needed to achieve a unvaccinated level of herd immunity would be, I believe, 2 to 3 million Americans. Pumpkin, she just here for views and money, folks. Move along, form your own thoughts. I think the people who listen to me appreciate that I'm not entirely didactic about what to think. I'm just very assertive about what I think and very intellectually curious in pursuing more knowledge and information on topics that are of critical interest to a lot of people, including people who live outside of the US. Alan loves my occasional arm. And Tinkerballs appreciates me. So there you go. That's the final word on the subject, really. Cool Photo also thinks I'm doing just fine. It is a treasure to have this interactive ability of Periscope for me to see your comments. And I am at least devoted to uncovering truth. Truth is something you can pursue and something that can be objectively engaged with. Not all truth is subjective. Some truth is, but there are certain facts that are very stern and unavoidable. And one of those stern, unavoidable facts is that the death toll in the United States is very high, and that the policies pursued by government officials, including the President of the United States, have been significantly to the detriment of the American people. Well, the trolls are trying to self-gratify themselves at our expense to a degree. And whilst we can pity them, we won't commiserate with them, because their problems are their own problems, and there are healthier, more productive ways to achieve self-gratification. Really, they could pursue learning things. They could try to learn another language. They could broaden their media diet. They could listen rather than try and turn up to someone else's broadcast and put down the host. All right. Well, as I said, though, I will go. Oh, I have my very own bottles of troll spray, self-administering. It's called my vigilant group of moderators. And Cool Photo, if you would like to be added to their ranks, just let me know. And then I hear it's a little bit like whack-a-mole. we mute or block people whose comments, whose ranting lets us know fairly quickly that they have no interest in contributing to an informed discussion. They're just here to chant disinformation slogans in order to try and assert superiority over others. It would be a good stocking stuffer. All right, so that means 2 people I have to add to Periscope moderators list. We still have a few months to do this. So what I need to do is search for Berg. Did you give me a clue, Alan, as to how I might find you? Because G of Berg is not coming up on Periscope. I'll look for cool photo. I've got you, so we can add that. And then, now that I'm following you, I can add you to the moderator list. There you go. All right. So yes, no, it's not a joke. Periscope is winding down. Clearly Periscope hasn't lent itself well to profitability. So they're just trying to contain their viewers more in the Twitter app itself. Oh, you're using your old Twitter so you can moderate, but I should follow you on your new Twitter. Okay, I will do that. Is there anything else that you would like me to quickly touch on before we leave? Let's see. We discussed that there are significant figures of unemployed at present, that the stimulus bill is really needed, and that nearly 21 million Americans are on unemployment aid, which is a problem. But this is also something new, that they appear to have cut unemployment benefits by 6 weeks in order to make room for checks in the deal. And when I say room, I mean a Republican conception of room, i.e., let's not give too much, because now Democrats are about to be in power, so we're going to pretend to be concerned about the deficit that didn't concern us when we were orchestrating tax breaks for wealthy people and incentives to buy jets and taxpayer subsidies for the very wealthy. But yes, when it comes to handing money out, then from the Republican prosperity gospel style ideology, it's bad to give money to people in need. But yes, so cutting unemployment benefits by 6 weeks apparently means a 3-person household will break even, 4-person ones will benefit, singles and 2-person households will find money if they're unemployed and they can't find work by mid-February. Because congressional leaders have said they will provide about $300 per week in additional federal unemployment benefits. But it doesn't really help people who haven't qualified for their state unemployment benefits, does it? And people who've had to resign from their jobs, for instance, many women, in order to take care of children who can't attend school, that doesn't count as losing your job in a pandemic, although it should, because childcare is not available during a pandemic. And if schools lock down and a parent has to be home, it is often women who will need to assume that role within a family. So yes, it was originally 16 weeks called for in the bipartisan plan released by the House and Senate lawmakers earlier this week. So the program was scaled back to free up money for the stimulus payment, which was a late addition to the plan. So taking from unemployed people to give a stimulus benefit more broadly, that's hard. That's a hard thing to accept, because unemployed people are those people on whom the harm of the pandemic is concentrated, the financial harm, and who are often are more compelled to go and work in dangerous circumstances because they desperately need to find employment. Trump might want to put his name on the checks, but again, he might just want to punish the American people for not voting him in. There's so much rhetoric about how he believes he didn't lose the election. I don't believe that. I believe he understood that it was going to be difficult to win, which is why he organized and orchestrated so many plans to steal the election. Louis DeJoy's appointment was not an accident. The destruction of over 600 mail sorting machines was not an accident. It was a purposive part of Trump's plan to decry mail-in voting, seed Republicans thinking with ideas that the election might be rigged if he lost, and to skew mail-in votes for Biden and in-person on-the-day votes for Trump so that he could claim to win. I'm sure he was in mortal fear of losing, understands that he lost, and understands that many people are easily persuadable to propaganda. And that's why I celebrate all of the court cases that he's lost, because it's evidence for those in the Republican voting support camp who are still capable of rationally engaging with evidence. And I've been waiting to find out what percentage that is. Now, Trump tweeted that 92% of Americans of Republicans believe that the election was rigged. And then everybody started to mock the 92% of Republicans, which is a mistake. It's always a mistake to take a Trump assertion and run with it as if it's fact. Don't argue with a Trump assertion as if it's fact. He's often purposefully lying, not because he's deluded that he lost, because he's trying to increase violence amongst his supporters in defense of someone who they have been encouraged to believe has had an election stolen from him. Humans are very strongly motivated by justice. I know this from having two young children, strong-minded young children, who are very vociferous if they think something is unfair to themselves and their interests. Justice is a very motivating human emotion, can motivate people to anger and action. Every powerful emotion is a powerful instigator of acts. And if you think something's been stolen, you try to defend it. So my argument here is that Trump is hoping that his supporters stir up enough trouble to encourage Republican officials to try and make concessions, to try and put a spoke in the wheel of the process of Congress sanctioning the Electoral College votes, verifying the Electoral College votes that have already been certified and counted, etc. He just is still trying to play whatever cards he still thinks he has in his hand. Doesn't mean he's delusional. He is a narcissist, and he is also someone who's quite accustomed to running from the law and running from consequence. So I heavily dispute all of those assertions out there in the media that Trump thinks he's won. He just wants to have won and wants there to be conditions under which people will make it reality that he won. He wants the election to be overturned and to be able to permanently evade the consequences of his crimes and malfeasance. So I think that's going to be my concluding point for the day. I covered the paltry $600 checks and the fact that even those checks are created by robbing from...
I know that was a lot of data to present very quickly. I think it's Tina Turner here, by the way, from her.
Oh, my husband's on a work call now.
Interested in whether your thoughts on the role of the dendritic cell activation or expansion.
I did not expect him to be on a work call because he was out for drinks with people, but I guess he just didn't drink a lot.
Well, whether that might provide a guide in terms of the activity of the mat itself.
All right, well, while he's doing that, I'm not going to go yet because that means I can't hang out with my husband. He's on a work call. I was going to get off because he just came back and I was going to say, hi, honey, want to hang out now that you're home? But he is not home. Oh, more people are leaving the Republican Party. Jennifer Horn, the co-founder of the Lincoln Project, is leaving the Republican Party. I mean, Steve Schmidt actively joined the Democratic Party, saying there's only one party that is now standing up for American democracy, so I'm joining that party, which is excellent, excellent news. Before I was broadcasting, or actually probably concurrently to my broadcasts, I would use Twitter to beg conservative voices who were anti-Trump, to beg never-Trumpers to join the Democratic Party, to recognize that these times, these moments were so critical to the United States that they had to do something that would be unexpected, that they had to revoke their membership in the Republican Party and join the Democratic Party. I remember badgering Radio Tom, if you know who he is, to do that. And he said he didn't think the Democratic Party would welcome him, which was a bullshit excuse. And it doesn't really matter if the Democratic Party welcomes you. What matters is saving your country from escalating fascism. And so I wonder if he will join the Democratic Party now. I'm sure it was a struggle for them because they conceptualized the Democratic Party as being a threat to the United States. Humans are very attached to their own ideas and their own perceptions, and their own perceptions are not always accurate, to say the least. So people who focused on the furthest left part of the Democratic Party and characterized that as being the entirety of the Democratic Party and the general policy thrust and values of the Democratic Party, they were always mistaken. The Bernie Sanders folks were never a significant majority. Bernie Sanders lost the 2016 primary by millions of votes, and he lost the 2020 primary again by millions of votes. He's able to enthuse rallygoers, but many more Democrats are older and more conservative than is acknowledged by the mainstream media. And that weight and heft of older conservative voters who are more likely to turn out to vote is something that anchors the Democratic Party in a more traditionally set of American values, which does retain a suspicion about taxes and a degree of suspicion about social safety nets. Obviously, Democrats are far more embracing of social safety nets than Republicans, but not everybody is as much free things, denounce corporations as Mr. Sanders is. I allow for some good he may have done by helping people, impoverished people, not feel ashamed of their poverty. But overall, I think the amount of harm he has done is not broadly recognized. I think that there is considerable evidence to highlight what he did in the 2016 election, which is namely that his staffers informed him that there were Russian accounts deriding Hillary Clinton, accusing her of being a murderer and other crimes on the Bernie Sanders Facebook page. And he knew that in May and September of 2016, and he did not go public with that knowledge. He did not support Hillary Clinton's account of there being Russian attempts to interfere with the news diet of Americans, the Russian concerted attempt to influence Americans through social media campaigns, through running a second covert parallel election campaign to Donald Trump. So parallel because you have the Trump campaign, and underneath the waters you have a secondary campaign run by Putin and considerable funding of the Russian government, which steals from Russian citizens to fund, their pet Putin projects, such as undermine Western democracy. I feel pity for the Russian citizens who are stolen from and cheated by their government. So I prefer to say the Kremlin rather than say Russia has attacked the United States. I prefer to say the Russian government attacked the United States. It's more accurate. The Russian people didn't ask Vladimir Putin to do this. He's a tyrant of a managed democracy. So people whose media diet is so circumscribed by Putin's wishes. Imagine if America had nothing other than Fox News and OAN. That's something more akin to the situation in Russia. And Americans are proud of the strength of their democracy, but more and more people have realized that the Murdoch Rupert Murdoch, who owns Fox, that his domination of the media landscape has created a powerful minority, a powerfully vocal minority in the United States who vote for people who hurt Americans, who undermine popular policies and ensure they never come to fruition. And the other thing about having the electoral college system is that it enables minority rule. It overrides the outcome of a popular vote. And the thing about minority rule is it facilitates corruption, because a minority government is not accountable to the popular will of the people. It does not have the check of the magic of a majority of people. And I'm using the word magic, which doesn't sound very scientific, because a popular comedian you may know, Sacha Baron Cohen, who created the Borat movies 1 and 2, he plays his movies for test audiences. And if they don't laugh at a joke, he goes back and finds ways to tweak the delivery of that joke, to change the audio, the background noises, to change something about it, because he understands that even if he thought something was funny, if a majority of the audience don't laugh, they are right. They have the magic of consensus, of mass consensus. There is a magic to it. Yes, I said that the $600 checks were taken from what? I will show you what they were taken from. They were taken from the duration of the federal program for unemployment benefits of $300 a week. I'll show you that. So this is from some reporting that says they'll provide $300 per week in federal unemployment benefits, additional federal unemployment benefits. So people qualify for state unemployment benefits, but then you get $300 extra per week in federal unemployment benefits. But those benefits would last for 10 weeks rather than 16 weeks. So there was original plan for 16 weeks. That's 6 weeks of federal unemployment benefits cut off in order to create room for the $600 stimulus checks for everyone. Does that make sense? Yes. Steve Schmidt, I believe I said that, who publicly joined the Democratic Party. So not Radio Tom, who I begged, but one of his co-founders of the Lincoln Project. True, Bernie Sanders is publicly understood to be a Democrat because he often runs to be the Democratic candidate in presidential elections. But yes, strictly speaking, I believe he's registered as an independent in the Senate, perhaps. Mr. Ed says hello. Nice to see you, Mr. Ed.
No, I think I agree with what's being already said, that the most valuable is going to be peer-reviewed manuscript with a short report. I think if the team is happy to proceed with producing both in parallel, the abstract for ASCO as well as the short report.
We always asked ourselves, it couldn't happen here.
Bear with me.
We always asked ourselves, it couldn't happen here. Could it?
Yes,
It can,
it did.
and it will. We're now only one presidential election from the end of America as we've known it. For the first time in our history, a majority of a major political party refused to accept the results of a presidential election. Violent thugs roam the Capitol streets.
Proud Boys, stand back and stand by.
Tens of millions will now teach their children they live in a country with an illegitimate president. This is how democracy dies. Today, the dividing line in American politics is not between conservative and liberal. It's between those who believe in democracy and those who are killing it. by their actions, by their silence. Trumpism is an autocratic evil unleashed in America. It must be crushed. The danger is real. The threat is now. If you believe America is worth fighting for, join us.
Lordy.
The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Well, there you go. It's an argument that I've made for years now, that Trumpism is an autocratic form of American fascism. And they are saying it and pointing it out. I mean, I don't love military language like crushed, but it is important to fight for it via persuasion and determination and assertiveness, I think. It's not something that requires us to take up arms at this stage. We don't have to join a war to go fight the Nazis. We have to be prepared to denounce Republicans who abandon their oaths of office to pretend that Biden hadn't won a legitimate election, to foster unwarranted suspicion amongst Republican voters that something had been stolen from them. I was hoping that as the pandemic continues, in that tragedy, there would still be an opportunity for Republicans to recognize that their president had lied to them, that many of their Republican governors had lied to them. Navigator Research did a survey, and I think they've found that a third of Republicans think that the president's statements since the election have been misguided, have been wrong, that he's wrong to pretend that he hasn't lost the election. And I know people focus on how horrifying it is that 2/3 of Republicans doubt the outcome of the election. But I'm imagining they're saying to themselves, everybody called Trump an illegitimate president as well. Many people on the left did, and I did as well. And I still believe it to be true. To me, a president is illegitimate when he cheats with the help of a foreign adversary. But that Mueller was too constrained, that Rod Rosenstein circumscribed the scope of the Mueller report too much, and America was denied an opportunity to oust a traitor when it was very necessary. And as a consequence, America is suffering from Russian hacking, that an inadequate defense or response to Russian hacking, to Russian government bounties on American troops' heads, and Russian attacks on the information landscape offered to Americans via the internet and via Fox News, because the Republican Senate members who speak on Fox News seem to be often guided by Russian interests as well. Senator John McCain of Arizona, now deceased, denounced his own Senate colleague, Republican Senator Rand Paul, as being an agent of Putin, and all evidence suggests that that is the case, and that he lies about COVID and he lies about the election results. Today he said on Fox News that the election was stolen, that he believed that, which undermines American democracy, which further weakens the United States, and does so in support of Vladimir Putin, who prefers America to be weaker. So the Lincoln Project an hour ago posted that it will take the dedication of citizens of all political beliefs to recognize that what Trumpism represents is far outside the American mainstream. Progressives will need to join with conservatives. Independents will need to join the army of decency and democracy. Well, I guess that's people articulating what I've wanted to hear all along, a rallying cry to join a coalition of decency that will involve people of differing backgrounds, histories, ideological affinities, etc., to join in a prioritization of democracy and decency, of helping each other and not harming each other, of supporting legitimate elections and not just trying to retain a apparent strongman in power regardless of his actions and regardless of his legitimate election loss. Anyway, I'm glad the Lincoln Project made that ad. It was hard to watch. A bit hard to watch for me at least, but perhaps not for others. Oh, I worked out I can look up media if I visit them. Okay, so how do I do that? Media. And then I'll see any ads that they post without having to scroll through their comments. Here we go. This is from December the 16th. All right.
On November 3rd, 2020, Donald Trump was defeated by Joe Biden. On December 14th, the Electoral College voted. But the battle is just beginning. Today in America, there is the most dangerous anti-democratic tide since the Civil War. Too many Republicans who call themselves conservatives are autocrats. They care about nothing but power. These Republicans may be American by accident of birth, but are unworthy of the greatness of America. They lead an emerging authoritarian movement that must be defeated. They follow the flag of Trumpism, not the American flag. This fight will last for many years, and we will fight for American democracy against its enemies. Democracy must win, or there will be no more debates about issues in this country. This is an American fight. We will never compromise with extremists, the racists, the violent thugs of Trumpism. We seek common cause with defenders of freedom everywhere. We fight for the right to peacefully disagree with each other as good and decent Americans unite to defend our country. We will win. They will lose. Our fight is just beginning. Join us.
Wow.
The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Extraordinary. One of my YouTube listeners points out that Frank Figliuzzi, a former US prosecuting attorney, I think he's former FBI, believes that pro-Trump militias may coordinate a violent response after Biden is inaugurated. Well, they're certainly already inciting violent responses on Parler. They're talking to themselves about how a violent insurrection is necessary, that they should buy beans and can openers and guns and ammunition. So I would be entirely unsurprised if there was a violent response after Biden is inaugurated. I thought there would be a violent response after Trump lost the election, but of course that was too early. They got to still have a few months of pretending that Biden hadn't won the election, that Trump hadn't lost the election. So they were postponing their violent response with a period of time to be deluded about a Trump victory. And I hope it gives the FBI a period of time to potentially detain and question those who express violent thoughts and plans on various social media platforms where they feel safe to openly share their violent ambitions. Yes, Rosenstein definitely is a traitor. One of the more notable developments in the past few months was state attorney generals noting that when they had questioned or said, well, we can't prosecute parents who have young children, migrant parents, because we can't detain, tender age children. And Rosenstein was at pains to point out that there were no age exceptions, i.e. even the parents with 4-month-old children had to be separated from their children so that they could be prosecuted and detained separately under the zero tolerance policy of the Trump administration. Proud boys, indeed. Proud mummies boys, which I shouldn't say actually because it's disparaging towards women in a way by including attachment to mothers as something worthy of derision. So I won't say proud mummies boys, but they're indulgently proud boys. They're delusionally proud boys who seek to ride on other people's achievements. They seek to pretend an association with the accomplishments of Western civilization and claim it for their own, and claim to be the defenders of those achievements, which they have no relationship to. Oh, look, little pumpkin, that's a bit of Nazi iron cross symbolism, isn't it? Look, on this platform, we don't endorse communists. We acknowledge that communism has killed millions of people around the world. is an ideology that is rooted in the delusion that human society can function without any appeal to competition, without any opportunity for humans to engage in healthy competition with each other to better themselves and their families. Any ideology, any political ideology that is so reliant on a denial of human nature and human functionality within a social context is doomed to failure, particularly when it relies on a lot of central bureaucracy and a lot of organization, because then you just organize to put a lot of people in camps and re-educate them about the benefits of communist ideology and communist practice. So when I say the struggle against tyranny is the struggle of memory against forgetting, I include communism in that as well as fascism. And I say it's important to speak out about the ills of communism, to remember and not to forget. But certainly Antifa does not imply communism, although individually speaking, many Antifa may be a little bit communistically inclined because it's an ideology, it has appeal over the ages, and people do forget the millions and millions who have died under communist rule and seek to pretend to themselves that it's just because that wasn't communism done properly in Russia or China or Cambodia or any of the other numerous places where communism has been attempted as a system of governance and has resulted in mass slaughter. Yes, Fox News is, well, it's a comfortable re-education camp. It doesn't involve suffering from food deprivation or physical liberty deprivation. It's just an indoctrination source that yes, slants and distorts information and uses emotional manipulation to enrage and inflame and flatter people until they are in a state of such highly manipulated cult-like mentalities that they can no longer engage with reason and science and the evidence of their own eyes and ears. And Newsmax is worse. Well, Fox is more potent because it makes more of an effort to have the appearance of balance, which makes it probably more pervasive and dangerous. Newsmax is more potent in terms of the amount of disinformation it spreads, but the subtlety of Fox means it has a broader audience. So Newsmax spreads lots of lies but has smaller viewer numbers. So they're both terrible. Over time, Rupert Murdoch has done extraordinary damage to numerous Western societies. The United States, the United Kingdom, and Australia are amongst the victims of Rupert Murdoch. And many have been driven into poverty as a result of Fox audiences voting for people who elect to block policies that would help and promote policies that would harm. All right, I think my husband's off the phone, so I'll go hang out with him now. Thank you so much. I know, cool photo, you've already said goodbye before. I'm just going to note this particular troll because that was a bit random. Hacking humans with nanotechnology. Wow, that's a novelty for a troll assertion in the middle of a broadcast. Am I one of the people hacking humans with nanotechnology? Does the aluminium... I shouldn't be rude. Bye, Zinte. Bye, Jeff. Bye, Alan. Should I say goodbye to David Cowboy? All right. Bye, David Cowboy. Don't know who you are. Bye, mate. Have a good one, everyone. Pompeius Magnus. Ciao, ciao. Cool photo. Thank you so much. Tinkers, take care as always. Oh, indeed. Happy Hanukkah. Thank you, everyone. All the best. Take care. Talk to you soon. Bye. Oh, Georgia. Keep on keeping an eye on Georgia. If you see any videos that are personal testimonials, those are good ones to share. Share Georgian ads, help raise the profile of Georgian candidates. And I'll share with you one last thing someone from Georgia said. they're being deluged with requests from Republicans to apply for a mail-in vote. And I thought, can't guarantee, but to me that seems like a hopeful sign that Republicans are desperate to have people apply for mail-in ballots. They know that the pandemic is worsening and that people might feel uncomfortable voting in person by the time it's reached January the 5th. The death rate might be so high, the hospitals might be so overwhelmed. They need their voters to apply for mail-in ballots to give them an opportunity to access voting. But if they're doing that, they're asking Republicans to do it. It's hard to counteract the pervasive and powerful campaign that Trump ran to disparage mail-in votes. He told Republican voters that mail-in voting was inherently a flawed system and subject to abuse. So they don't like voting by mail-in votes, and it's going to be hard for 2 local Senate candidates to suddenly overturn all of that conditioning that Trump participated in for months, that Trump pushed for months. So tough luck, Republicans. It's going to be hard to activate that level of turnout that you might need. Not to say there's any guarantee they won't activate it, because Republicans are renowned for having higher turnouts for midterm elections than Democrats. We need Democrats to know how critical these 2 runoff elections are, how critical it is that they vote for both John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock, to give Democrats the ability to pass legislation through the House and the Senate, to know that Mitch McConnell, if he's allowed to retain the position of Senate Majority Leader, will block all the good that Biden, not all of it, but significant amounts of the good that Biden and Harris could do for the nation, because Mitch McConnell will oppose legislation for spite. He will run America into the ground in order to claim that it's Democrats' fault. And he will do that over and over again. Hi, Jane. So sorry to miss you. I'm just leaving, but I wanted to make a point about Georgia. I hope it's been well received, that there is some room for glimmer of hope, but that we all still need to see that situation as something we can help with, and that we need to help with in whatever ways we can, if that's phone banking or contributing or just amplifying the messages from the candidates themselves, to strengthen every opportunity that Democrats have to win in that state, because it's critical to the success of the Biden-Harris administration. Everybody voted to help them win, to get that 81 million vote turnout for Biden, against the charms of a fascist who put his name on relief checks, so that people who aren't very politically engaged just saw Trump's name on a stimulus check. I didn't think it would work, but that's because it's more difficult for me to think like a politically disengaged person, because I am very politically engaged, as you all are, presumably, if you're paying attention to this broadcast. People who don't watch the news and don't care about politics got checks with Trump's name on it, and they turned out to vote for more of that. 74 million people did that. They're not just deluded from Fox News, some of them are disengaged. But the commitment of Americans who understood the threat, the unique threat posed by Trump, and the Republicans who prepared the way for a Trump to succeed and who facilitated him once he was in power, they must be held to account. Jane's going to be on HAPS, the new app. Is it a new app, or I haven't really looked into HAPS yet? I'll do that. I will broadcast Jane from Twitter live, I think. Alan's pointed out my Patreon link, if it would give you joy to join and be one of those people who contribute anything from $2 up to substantially more. I have some well-situated and generous Patreons who are able to do that, but $2 a month is something that many people can do and choose to do so, which I value and appreciate. Thank you. Yes, Alan says join the Dav chat community. Brett notes that some of the right-wing QAnon conspiracy streams on Scope are chilling. I agree. I haven't watched them, but I would imagine just any exposure I have to QAnon thinking is very chilling. There was a Time magazine article on people who were affiliated with Q thinking, and they said that they would turn the gas on in their car and use carbon monoxide to kill their children and themselves if Joe Biden won the election. So that was the level of extremist thinking on display in that Time magazine article, which just fundamentally shocked me. And as we always say, we think we're beyond being shocked, but Trump and Trump supporters continue to find new ways to shock and revolt us. Makes a great stocking stuffer. Thanks, Alan. Well, I think I've said goodbye to everybody. Jane, I should probably write down your HAPS thing if I have to start again with my follower network. Let's take a picture. Yes, the language on their mass arrests of journalists, sending people to Gitmo, claiming that Barack Obama's about to be arrested, I imagine, and Hillary. I guess it's not new. They were chanting "lock her up" in the 2016 campaign. It's just intensified and becoming more specific about the violence. And of course, we know now that there were people in a paramilitary group actively rehearsing how they would kidnap, rape and kill Michigan governor, Democratic governor Gretchen Whitmer, for the tyranny of imposing measures on the Michigan population to minimize the harm from COVID, to impose short-term restrictions in order to increase economic viability and restricted negative public health outcomes. So Gretchen Whitmer tried to help the people of Michigan and succeeded in helping the people of Michigan to a degree, and to punish her for that, the audacity to exhibit leadership in a context of extremely deranged QAnon thinking and Trump thinking, Trump disordered thinking. They were going to blow up the Capitol building, set fire to it, kidnap her at gunpoint, take her to a private location, hold a public trial for her. They even planned to do some things which I will not even mention now, actually, they're too revolting, and also execute her. So yes, one hopes that the FBI is devoting resources to monitoring those chats. And of course, Trump did not cease in his purposeful propaganda against her and his disparagement of Gretchen Whitmer, knowing that that would further incite his supporters to target her for violence and violent rhetoric, because he's a domestic terrorist. Trump is a domestic terrorist. And it's hard to say that because he's still seated at the Oval Office. There's a domestic terrorist in a position of power in the United States. And I'm almost afraid to use that, because anything I say to honestly denounce Trump, we know the right will take that and use it to falsely deride Biden or to condemn Biden. They'll call him a domestic terrorist. It's like, no, there was somebody who actually acted like a domestic terrorist, who continued to verbally assault the Michigan governor even after the plot was exposed to rape and kill her. There is one president who has actively had campaign managers collaborate with Russian intelligence agents, and that is Trump and his former campaign manager, Paul Manafort, who, did he pardon Paul Manafort? No, Paul Manafort just got out of jail because of COVID, but he offered a commutation of sentence to Roger Stone. And who else has Trump pardoned? The sheriff who shackled pregnant women to their beds if they were in jail, and profiled people of color. He pardoned Flynn very comprehensively, even though Flynn was guilty of lying to FBI agents to conceal his conversations with Russian ambassadors who are also identified as Russian spies, but who did so, we can intuit, under the instruction of Donald Trump and his close affiliates. So Flynn lied to protect Trump and was rewarded for that at long length with a comprehensive pardon from Trump. They call Flynn General Flynn, yeah. All right, folks. Sorry for taking so long to say goodbye. Nice to meet you, Brett. I hope you turn up for a future broadcast. And thank you so much to everyone else. Bye.